What's going on, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here. We are back today with part 2 of my 2-video series on the SpaceX engineering interview process that I talked about originally when discussing my internship experience there. So part 1 of this series, I would recommend you watch that video first because I'm leaving out certain details in this one, but part 1 of this series talked about the recruiter screening, the technical screenings I had to do, and the online assessment I had to do leading up to the onsite. This video is going to be about that on-site process and how to actually survive 6 to 8 hours of getting grilled by SpaceX engineers or engineers at another company. Like I said in that video, this is applicable to a lot of different companies, any company at which you might be asked to actually go and do an interview in person. Hope you enjoy this video and let's get right to it. Now when we get to the on-site, it's just going to be a repetition of these different types of rounds over and over and over again for like 6 hours, which if it sounds horrifying, that's because it is. There are a couple of new things, like they'll likely have you do a presentation, and then there's the final call with a hiring manager who you may or may not have met before, but now we're going to talk about the on-site at the end. So the most important thing to keep in mind with an on-site is stamina. Like this is 6 to 8 hours, so basically a full work day that you are going to 100% be in the spotlight. You're going to have several very intelligent engineers from a top company you're really invested working at, bearing down on you, asking you a ton of questions. 6 to 8 hours is a long time to spend in the spotlight, answering incredibly technical questions and talking with incredibly technical people. So be prepared. I treat on-sites like a championship match. Give it all you got and prepare accordingly. Sleep well. Don't prepare until 3 a.m. Even if you haven't prepped a lick, at that point, sleep is the best thing you can do. Dress nice because it's an interview, but don't dress too nice. That's a mistake I've made before. Be comfortable. Make sure you're comfortable. If they say business casual, take them up on it, right? Because you don't want to be in 3 layers of suede, sweating, dehydrated the whole time. Speaking of which, make sure you bring food and water. This is, in a lot of ways, an athletic endeavor you're going to be going on. You might not think it, but it's true. Don't be afraid to ask for a break between rounds. I will admit on record for the first time, there are times in between interview rounds where I've said I had to go to the bathroom and I really didn't. I have lied through my teeth and just gone and taken a 5-minute break in the bathroom because I needed it, right? Don't be afraid to ask for a break. If you don't want to lie about going to the bathroom, you could also just say, hey, can we take 5 minutes? Just take a breather, maybe step outside, whatever. You are mortal, and it's better to do that and be vulnerable for a moment than try to plow through and have your actual performance in the real interview be worse. Nobody's going to say, I was going to hire this guy, but then he took a 5-minute break. Like, that's not how people work, generally speaking, anyway. Review the schedule the night before so you can kind of play through it in your head and think about who do I have next, or when's lunch, or stuff like that. When should I take a break, et cetera, et cetera. Review the schedule before so you know what to expect. And last thing I'll say is do a little bit more prep, but don't go crazy. Like, I would do light prep for the same kind of stuff that you did previously. Just review what you did previously, maybe run through a couple questions that you struggled with or you expect to hear, but go light. Like, don't go nuts right before the onsite. I know I've done that before. I and a lot of times will probably ignore this advice and go nuts anyway, but if you can avoid it, take it easy before the onsite to, again, conserve that stamina that is so important. Now for the presentation. The presentation is very, very important. It fluctuates a lot from company to company, but chances are if they're giving you a presentation, it's the only time that you're going to be talking to everyone at once. And in a lot of ways, I'll talk about towards the end of this slide, it sets the tone for the rest of the day, which I'll explain in a little bit. The point is, one very big mistake I've made before and did make at SpaceX is don't pick the thing on your resume that is the most impressive. Like that, oh, wow, I worked at NASA or whatever else. Like, don't pick the thing that's most impressive. Pick the thing that's most relevant. As I've talked about on this channel, it's not enough to just be a generally good candidate. You want to have a narrative. You want to have a story about why you're specifically geared towards the role you're interviewing for. And so pick the type of experience you have that lends itself the most to that goal. Don't just pick the one that you think is going to wow them the most. If you're interviewing at a top company like SpaceX, it's pretty hard to wow them anyway. So you might as well pick the thing that's the most relevant, and your best chance at wowing them is say, wow, this person's done specific things that I do every day at my job, and it would be great to have another set of hands that can help me do it. This person seems to know what they're talking about. Another general piece of advice I'll give is less content presented better is better than more content presented worse. So I have this bad habit of trying to cram as much content in the presentation as I possibly can, mainly because I want to answer the question they provided or the prompt they provided to the highest degree and then some to social initiative, right? Which I think is a good goal to have, but it's important to keep the logistics around how long you have, the fact that they may interrupt you for questions. It's important to keep all that in mind, and you don't want to sprint through the entire presentation, because then the quality of the presentation is going to go down. It's going to be harder for them to actually understand what you're saying, and they're going to kind of tune out, which is not a good outcome. So less content presented or delivered better, I think, is better than more content presented worse, provided you've hit that kind of min viable amount of content to answer the question. Practice, practice, practice. I've said this a million times on the channel. Practice alone, practice with other people if you can. Try to think about questions they might ask and practice answers to those. Practice. End of story. Be mentally prepared for them to interrupt you. Every interview presentation starts out with, we're going to hold questions until the end. Nobody ever holds questions to the end. They're going to interrupt you. So just be prepared for them to do that. The first one or two interruptions they might give might catch you off guard a little bit, but you'll get pretty used to it. And that's good, because you want it to feel more like a conversation than just getting rambled at by some kid off the street that they're interviewing for a job. You want it to feel like a conversation. And ideally, these questions lead to an interesting conversation where you can show off how much you know even more so. So interrupting questions is not a bad thing. Be prepared for it. Even if they tell you they're not going to interrupt you, they probably will. And like I said towards the beginning, the presentation will often set the tone for the rest of the day. Be sure to give it the attention it deserves. What do I mean by this? Well, if you think about Sisyphus from the last slide, a good presentation, a strong presentation that crushes the original prompt, shows initiative and quality of work, and demonstrates that you have a strong understanding of what they want. All the interviews after that are yours to lose. You've shown that you can do good work through that presentation, and now they're just kind of talking to you and asking you more general questions. You're pushing a boulder down the hill. If you bomb the presentation, then from the beginning, they all have this idea of like, I don't know if this is really gonna work out. You know, this seems like a weak candidate. And then you have to push this boulder up the hill. Now you got to prove to them that their initial impression of you was wrong and that you're actually great, which is difficult, and I don't think I've ever done that successfully. My point is, hit the presentation hard, really crush it, be confident, confidently present good work, and then the rest of the day will just be pushing a boulder downhill. Like, just kind of checks and balances and you know, asking additional questions and making sure you're not a jerk and getting a vibe check, stuff like that. Presentation sets the tone for the day. Make sure you crush it using the tips here. So between this and the final boss I'm going to discuss now, there's usually multiple technical rounds, like I just mentioned. Those are usually pretty similar to the preparation we talked about previously. So I'm not going to have a slide dedicated to those. Use the same prep we talked about. The final boss. First of all, I'm calling it the final boss not to intimidate people. I don't think this is the hardest round or anything. I'm just calling it that because usually that's when you talk to the boss or the highest ranking person that you're going to be working with, directly or as a skip. In some smaller teams, I'd meet the hiring manager or the person I'd be reporting to directly in the beginning, have this ongoing relationship with them through the process. And then at the end, you're talking to someone at the director level or the VP level, someone who your would-be boss has to justify your hiring to. So it's a skip there. Other times, if it's a larger team, I've just been talking with other engineers, more senior engineers who I'd be reporting to informally. They're going to be helping me, but they're not my actual supervisor or hiring manager. And then in the last round here, you really talk to the guy or girl who's going to be your actual boss. So this is like the final boss. This is probably going to be light on technical. Like they might just ask you to kind of touch on different things you talked about again, just to refresh their memory or clarify a couple questions they have and tell you a couple of technical things relevant to the role that might not have come out earlier. But it's largely going to be behavioral. And I'm calling it behavioral, not that it's going to be a tell me about a time you did X type of interview. A lot of times this is a vibe check. Like this is the person you're going to be working for. You're going to have a pretty close relationship with this person. You're going to be spending a lot of time with this person. And so they're trying to make sure that they like you and you like them, and it's going to be a fruitful relationship. So be prepared to answer some big picture questions here. Not just the standard ones I talked about with the recruiter screening at the beginning, but other ones like, what'd you think of the team? At that point, you've met everyone that you're going to be working with. So if you think they're all jerks or they're all going to think you're a jerk, then that's not going to work out. How do you like to work? Like, do you like getting micromanaged? Or nobody likes getting micromanaged, but do you like getting set deliverables and a little bit more hands-on, or do you like more of a hands-off approach? What are your goals at this job? How do you see your career progressing? Stuff like that. Be prepared to answer those big picture questions because, again, this is a large part of your life that your manager is going to be primarily responsible for, making sure you get along with the team and you're progressing towards your goals nicely so you stick around and that you're doing good work. Yeah, above all else here, be honest and be authentic. These days, people can smell bullshit from a mile away. So don't start off your relationship with your would-be boss lying to them and telling them what they want to hear. The biggest thing I know people do, not just because I've seen it, but also because in many interviews I've had with bosses, they tell me, don't just tell me what I want to hear. They want to really know how you are. And regardless of maybe you do disagree or there are some parts of working for them that are going to be an adjustment for you, being able to reflect on that and share that information with them is the underpinning of a good, authentic relationship. So be honest, be authentic, and hopefully get to know the person you're going to be working for. The truth is, they're not making this decision in isolation right then and there. I mean, obviously, if you bomb it, they might make a decision right there, but assuming you don't do that, they're going to go back to the team. They're going to want to hear about how the rest of the rounds went. They're going to want to think about it. There's going to be salary negotiations that come later. So this isn't like the make or break moment, which is why, calling it the final boss, while funny, isn't a perfect analog. Just be honest and get to know the person. And I think that general likability is going to help smooth things over through the rest of the process, which I do think it's worth making a video about how those discussions go about whether or not to hire someone. I have had a few experiences on the other end of it when teams I've been on are hiring people, but I haven't had a ton, and so I want to be really careful about making a video about it. Nonetheless, there is going to be more discussion to be had after the fact, so don't feel like you have to sell yourself as hard as possible. Just be honest and authentic and get to know each other. That's my best advice for this final round. This was definitely worth a video of its own. I hope it was helpful to you. Narratively speaking, I phrased this in the way that my SpaceX interviews went. But to be honest with you, while SpaceX was the most difficult interview process I've ever done, it was not different from any other ones I've done. Some other ones I've done are shorter or emphasize certain things more than others, but I think all the advice I've given in this video is applicable to interviews at lots of different companies, especially top ones that have the resources to do these multiple rounds. I hope this advice was helpful. I hope it was useful to you. I wish you the best of luck on your engineering interview endeavors. Like I said, I'm the Unhinged Engineer. I make professional development content for other engineers like myself, and if that's something you're interested in, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.